in starting out with the F-1 visa, now this is probably one of the most common visas that you have seen as you've been doing your research. And the reason why I'm going through and breaking them down is because there is a different visa based on the type of program that you might be doing. So with F-1 visas, this is specifically for students who are coming to the US for long-term programs. So you're thinking about people who are going to be coming here for college or university. So you are going to be in a 4-year program, maybe you're in a 3-year program. It really depends on what particular program you are doing, but most of the undergraduate programs in our country are going to be 4 years, and then there are some that are 5 years if, let's say, you're doing something like nursing. So you're coming here for a specific degree program, or you're coming here to attend high school. So again, you could be here for 4 years in a high school. You're coming here for seminary, so you're doing your seminary studies here, and that tends to take multiple years, or maybe you are doing extensive language training. So this is going to be for people who are here for the long haul. So with the F-1 visa, the most important thing to know about it is that you cannot be issued an F-1 visa unless you are in an accredited school. So with accreditation here in the US specifically, I know around the world it may look a lot different, but here in the US, what that means is there are specific accreditation bodies. So they have one that is for high schools, they have one or a couple that are for colleges and universities. They are highly regulated by the government. And so what it means is that these particular organizations, these governing bodies, they go in and they decide whether or not the particular overall plans of the colleges or universities or high school are up to code in terms of what people would need to know at a national level, also even at a local level, and does it actually lead towards getting a full degree. So with accreditation, it's really important. Most schools are always focused on making sure that they can keep their accreditation. It's something that you will need because it allows you the ability not only to function as an actual organization as a school, but also as well to be able to move forward with issuing degrees and doing different things. It's really hard to function without one. And throughout the past 10 years in particular, a little bit even before that, there's been a lot of talk around schools that aren't accredited and how they have been able to swindle people. And, a lot of them gave out all these faulty student loans that the government has been generous to forgive in a lot of ways. And so you definitely want to make sure that your school is accredited. One of the ways to do that is going to be to make sure that it is verified by the SEVP. And so that is the Student Exchange and Visitor Program. And so what I'm going to do is I will link information about the SEVP and also a website that is controlled by the US government where you can just type in and see if the schools that you're interested in are accredited. Now, most schools that a lot of international students tend to choose here in the US, whether they be big or small, or even if they are not name brand, are accredited, but you definitely want to make sure about that, because if it is not, you're going to have an issue getting an F-1 visa. So definitely check out the 2 links below that I have labeled as F-1 visa information so that you can find out about that. But accreditation is going to be key to getting an F-1 visa, so definitely consider that. So one of the other big questions that students have, specifically when they're coming to me, they've made their way to me, maybe they have begun their process of filling out their application for their schooling, and they're like, how do I get started with a student visa? So it definitely is true that you want to get going early on. Now, when I say get going early on, what I mean is you want to be very clear with your school as well, because they will have more specific information about the type of visa you will need. I'm just going to go through it in general terms, but the school will know based on your program if the F-1 is right for you or if there's a different one that is right for you. But what you definitely want to do is to begin gathering materials. So I talked about this if you saw my ISFA video, where I was saying that it takes a long time, whether you think so or not, to gather material. So you're going to want to make sure that you have all the information about, whether it be making sure that you're getting your bank statements in line, or if you're going to need to submit a birth certificate or anything that you would need to submit with your visa, all those things are included. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you get those things lined up, just so that as the process begins, you're good to go, because you don't want to be in a situation where you, let's say, get quickly accepted to a school, although that usually doesn't happen here in the US. It's a longer process than a lot of places, but you get accepted into your program, and then you're having to figure out, maybe your parents live somewhere else than you do, because I know a lot of international students tend to venture out a lot younger. And so maybe your parents are back home somewhere and you're like, hey, I need to gather my birth certificate and the bank statements. I need to figure out who's going to be able to write the letters of recommendation, all these different things. And so you want to make sure that you are gathering all those things early on. In terms of applying for a visa, any visa, but the F1 specifically, what we're talking about right now, I'm going to be doing a separate video talking about the application process in detail. But you'll just want to know that you can't really make a move, and this is common for any type of visa. You can't make a move until you get into a program. So the program is essentially the entryway into the school, and then the visa is the entryway into the country. So until you actually get into the program, you can't really do a lot with it. There's going to be information that you will need from your school to provide to even sign up on the registration site for the US government to be able to start working with you to get you a visa. But you just want to know that in terms of the order, even though you are not going to be going through and applying for a visa until you get into your program, you can go ahead and start gathering the documents that you're going to need. Now, in terms of the actual payment, you do have to pay. I mean, this is America. We like to make our money. And so there is definitely a fee. I mean, most visas around the world have fees, but you can guarantee that America has probably a higher fee than a lot of other countries. And so you want to know a couple of things about it is that, and I'm going to link this information below as well. There is a standard fee for the actual visa. So for you to actually get the visa, for them to actually go through and process it for you. And then for some countries and a lot of students around the world, there's also an issuance fee. So this issuance fee means that they are charging you money to actually issue the visa, so to actually cut the visa, and also as well, if they need to send it back to you. For most students, they will need to send it back. There are some places where you can actually pick it up if you're doing it through a consulate or an embassy. We can get into that a little bit later, but they will a lot of times give you an issuance fee. I'm going to leave a link below to the website that is, again, hosted by the State Department of the US, so it's official, where you can actually see specifically what the fee will be that you will have to pay just to get the visa. For most students, it's going to be 160 US dollars, at least of this time that I'm filming this video. And you can also type in your country to see if there's an issuance fee. So you'll just want to keep that in mind, that again, it's not going to be thousands and thousands of US dollars, but it is going to be something that you will want to factor in to your particular budget. I know that it's something that students stress about as they're going through. So just make sure that you are factoring that money in, whether you have just the visa fee or whether you have the visa and the issuance fee. So to wrap up with the F1 visa specifically, I know that a lot of students have the question of, can I work on a student visa, specifically the F1 visa? Now, I'm going to do a separate video as well about this because I want to dive deeper. I don't want to spend the whole video here talking about this. But yes, the basic answer is you can, but there are lots of restrictions around that. There are different restrictions around the amount of hours you can work. There's also different restrictions around whether you can work during the holidays, off campus, on campus. So I will cover that in a different video, but essentially, yes, you will have the opportunity to do certain jobs while you were on the F1 visa. So I know for a lot of students, that's something that is really important to you. And so, yes, I can tell you confidently that you can do that. The other thing that people want to know is, how long does it last? So with the F1 visa, it is going to last the duration of your program. So if your program is 4 years, you will have the ability to have that visa for 4 years. Now, in many aspects, and sometimes this depends on the school, sometimes it depends on the relationship that the government has with the school, you will have to renew every year. And I know for some students, they're like, do I have to leave the country? Do I have to stay in? That really depends. They change those rules all the time. So you will want to work closely with your school to make sure that you're understanding the rules of what that's going to look like for you. But usually what's going to happen is your school, when they're issuing the letter that you're going to get the visa, they're going to say how long your program runs, and your particular visa will run the length of that particular program. So that's going to be great for you. And then there is a 60-day grace period after it ends, whether you are looking to switch to another visa to maybe find work, or maybe you are a high school student and you are switching to maybe a secondary F1 visa to go into a college or university program. There's all different configurations, but you do have a bit of a grace period to be able to stay in the country and maybe make your next move. Now, one important thing that I did want to note, and this basically covers all the visas that I'm talking about, and this is if you are a student who is not coming to the US, but you just want to learn about student visas, this covers most visas around the world. One of the important things to know, and I talk about this all the time to the point where I'm also sometimes lecturing is that you never want to overstay a visa. And so number one, you don't want to stay past the grace period. And also as well, if something changes throughout the time that you are here, let's say you're in the US and you came for a program and you were in a high school program and you dropped out of that program, you don't get to keep that F1 visa. And things have been so restricted and regulated to the point, particularly over the past 10 years or so. And this goes for other countries around the world where schools have basically they legally have to report that you have dropped out. And so what that means is if you have dropped out of a program or you decided it's no longer for you, not that you were switching a program, let's say like you would if you are in a university and you were in medicine and you're like, hey, I don't like this anymore, I want to go into communications, that's completely fine because again, you are still enrolled. But if you are actively saying, I no longer want to do this, then that means that you have a problem because you are then in violation of your visa and you are no longer an active student status. And just know that it's not going to go very well for you. You're going to want to follow the actual legal chain of things. So if for some reason you do decide to do that, connect with your school, figure out how you can get off the visa, and then they will report everything to the State Department. The State Department will follow up, and then they will figure out a plan for you to be able to leave the country. So you definitely just want to make sure that you do that. So if you are maybe considering that in the future you may want to drop your program, just know what that might look like for you legally. And I can just say confidently that it doesn't matter whether it's the US, UK, Germany, wherever, if you get kicked out based on a visa violation, it's not going to go well. You won't really be able to come back into the country, guys. So you want to make sure that you are doing this the right way and the legal way. So that is my spiel on that. So we are going to move on now to the F1 visa, which is another visa that students often are looking at if they want to come here to the US.